Hi, I'm Kevin the geologist, and I took a left at the valley.
I know we shouldn't have to scream that we're atheists. You know, we don't have non-astrologers and all that. But with the religious people taking over the world, I mean, we can either speak up or be pushed into a corner.
I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist.
From some South American brewery, this is Left of the Valley. My name is Kevin, and I don't always host a podcast, but when I do, it's an atheist, skeptics, and humanist Canadian podcast. Joining me as usual is the most interesting atheist team in the world. She once gave her mother the talk and went to a psychic to warn her, Nancy.
Whoa! If I warned the psychic and I'm still here, it must have been pretty powerful.
He once brought a knife to a gunfight just to even the odds, and when he met the Pope kissed his ring, Tyler. Hey, how's it going? And a friend from the show, Deb, who, if she was to punch you in the face, you'd have a strong urge to thank her. And she once killed 2 stones with 1 bird.
Funny.
Guys, welcome back. Hope you guys had a good week.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, it brought us here again. I'm glad to be here. So
Back on the show.
all's well that ends well.
Exactly. A little chit-chat before we get into our show today. We'll be talking about the conspiracy theory of 9/11. We were supposed to do a show on... we were supposed to have a debate between Tyler and Kevin. But Kevin's not here, and we thought, since 9/11 just passed, we'd do a show on that instead. Did you guys hear about that story in Winnipeg? This is an interesting story. This is a story about a flooring company in Winnipeg. There was a customer. His bill was overdue by $1,153.19. What they did is they took a road sign on the side of the road and say, "Mr. X, your bill is overdue. Come pay your bill. 1,100 blah blah blah." And it yes,
Did they put the road sign out
on the road?
everybody
Yes, very visible. Everybody kind of like shaming,
Oh, yeah.
Defamation of character.
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Were they right to do something like that? I mean, if the situation was reversed, if somebody was to put out a sign saying, don't shop at such and such store because they're crooks, you would get a lawsuit.
It's liable.
It's only liable if you can't prove that it's true.
Yeah, well, you can't.
I think in either case you're going to end up
Well,
in
but
court.
it's character. It would fall, maybe not liable, but wouldn't it be character assassination? Although it's not assassinating his assassinating his wallet.
That just climb real fast here.
Yeah,
From taking a roadside to character assassination.
No, I think it would. I'm totally against it. And if I was thinking of buying flooring, I would. Avoid them like the plague, because I'm thinking, at what point is that sign going to go up? I mean, if I'm 2 minutes late, is the sign going to go up with my name on it?
Yeah, I'm not going to name the company, but the company basically said that they tried several times to contact the guy. The customer slash victim basically said he didn't like the job they did, so he refused to pay.
Oh, okay. So there was a dispute.
There was a dispute there.
That makes it worse on the part of what the flooring company did. Then.
Exactly. But I think the flooring company kind of shot themselves in the foot by doing something like that, because if I saw that, I would be questioning whether I want to shop at that place too.
Was it resolved? Was there anything else?
No, it hasn't been resolved
That's
yet.
where it is now.
I might go to
my
a small
gosh.
claims court, I guess.
For how much was the bill?
$1,153.19.
$1,100.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's
Talk
still
about some negative advertising costs, right?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. They said there's no such thing as negative advertising.
You think they're going to bill them for the sign too?
They just might. In other news,
my gosh. Okay.
let's go south to our American friends. Trump. Mr. Trump. We can't get away from him.
I've heard that name somewhere. I've heard that name.
He's somewhat familiar. You might have to look him up. Yeah, apparently he admitted that Obama was actually born in the U.S. now.
Oh,
He finally came out and said, "Yeah,
Is he
yeah."
the father?
I watched him. I was watching that. And go
You
ahead.
need a better hobby, dear.
I need no, but I was watching it because I thought, I'm going to get to tell this story, and I was right. I was watching, and CNN was making this really big pitch that wow, now what is he going to say? Is he finally going to come clean? Is he going to apologize? And they were, the talking heads were chatting among themselves and speculating about what he was going to do. And then they turned the whole thing over, and there was Mr. Dump Trump monopolizing the airways by having these Medal of Honor winners in his new D.C. hotel. Ooh. So he was surrounded by these Medal of Honor winners, all old guys who were saying, yeah, Trump is the greatest, the greatest, the greatest. And this is, isn't this nice hotel? And I'm watching this thing go on for, 20, 25 minutes. I'm thinking, when is CNN finally going to call a halt? Well, not only did they call a halt to it, but they finally were outraged. And they were only outraged because it was something that Trump did to the media, not to us, not any of the other lies that that he did to the Democrats or to the Gold Star mothers. None of that. No. He took advantage of the opportunity to promote himself and his hotel. And at that point, I said, if this doesn't wake those guys up, nothing will. And so the repercussions have just been wonderful, in that now it looks as though they're finally going to reveal some of the investigative journalism stuff that they've been holding back on.
I don't know why they're so mad. They've been doing this ever since the beginning of the campaign. They've just been letting him promote himself from day one.
Yeah, but
why are they angry now?
Because he although he's trashed the media in terms of, the media, they're awful, they're terrible, they've never pulled, he has never pulled a stunt like this where the campaign manager said, this is going to be his admission, however they worded it. And it turned out to be 100% promotion of Trump himself. And so the fact that they got snookered into having this promotional time rather than political time finally was I hate to say the straw, it finally burrowed under their skin enough to where it was now personal. And if that's what it takes to wake up the media, that's fine. But they are lagging behind by at least a year.
A little too late.
Little too late. But at least if they do it, because now I noticed that there was quite a number of so-called journalists, analysts, and reporters who were finally coming down on the right side of this campaign. And
speaking of U.S. presidential election, Hillary is sick.
Well, she had pneumonia.
Yeah, I don't know.
Does
she just have pneumonia?
Yeah, of course she still had pneumonia.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to give credence to right-wing conspiracy, but
you will anyway.
But I will anyway. I can't help but think there's something a bit more in that. I think there's more than just pneumonia there.
Because you're going to always think there's more regardless. She's put out her records. She took a couple of days off. She's back on the campaign trail. And if it was a man, everybody would say, oh, poor guy. I hope he got enough rest and relaxation.
That's not because she's a woman. It has nothing to do with that. It's just, I don't know.
It's because she's the wrong candidate.
Well, I would agree with that, but that's... I don't know. I can't. When they say when there's smoke, there's fire, and I can't. I don't know.
Well, you got your skeptical tinfoil hat on.
I do. I've got my tinfoil hat on.
And she also has a habit of fainting, and I've known plenty of people who faint. I've never fainted in my entire life. But the people I know that have fainted have a history of it. This is the third time that she's fainted.
Maybe she's like one of those goats that fainted.
No.
I think she's just prone to it. So, Bernie Sanders might get pneumonia and then not faint publicly.
Maybe.
Well, I think I've fainted, and I fainted, when I was having a tooth pulled.
I have that effect on people.
Yeah, exactly. But people who faint, they suddenly get low blood pressure and down they go, and it's something that is inherited, like sinus trouble.
Have you fainted more than once, Nancy?
I fainted. I almost fainted once from heat stroke, but I didn't quite. But yeah, I fainted
more than once.
Second time was with Elvis.
Yeah, twice.
When she met Elvis, she fainted too.
Yeah,
well, and imagine.
But that's swooning. That's swooning. That's different than fainting.
Hillary also has a much busier schedule and a lot more pressure than your average person.
That's quite true.
If she also has a history of fainting, which was one of the things you said before, Kevin, was why aren't Trump and Bernie, fainting, and that's probably it. She's just more
prone to fainting.
Or
More
maybe
prone,
she's
yeah.
on her menstrual cycle and she had
Oh,
low
jeez.
iron.
Tyler.
The comments of Tyler, not necessarily those of Uncle Valley.
Low iron.
Low iron. Nancy, you ready to go?
I've been going already. Now I got to get back on track. That's what you're saying. Let's get back on track. You betcha. Okay, here we go for this day in history, which, as we all know by now, is a roundup of those events and people who altered and illuminated the days between September the 12th to September the 18th. September the 13th was International Chocolate Day and Grandparents' Day. So I hope people brought boxes of chocolates to their grandparents.
I brought my grandparents.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Dip them in chocolate.
There you go. You dipped your grandparents in chocolate?
It was not a pretty sight. I don't want to talk about it. I am never welcome back to that chocolate factory again.
With sprinkles? I mean, that makes a difference. And September the 13th, the World Hockey Association was founded in 1971. But believe it or not, by American promoters Dennis Murphy and Gary Davidson.
on.
What?
Yeah, I know.
Americans founded...
They
no.
did in 1971.
It's a good thing we invented our baseball.
Wikipedia says it, so it's got to be true. They included teams without NLH. This is the World Hockey Association, not the NHL. So, okay.
Oh, okay.
There you go. Okay. They
Still.
included teams from cities without NHL teams like the Miami Screaming Eagles, the Los Angeles Aces, the Chicago Cougars, and the New York Raiders. So they had a whole different set. But by the end of the season, only six teams remained. They were really struggling with financial difficulty, and they were unable to make the payrolls. And they came to an agreement with the NHL early in 1979, and the NHL sort of absorbed them, but of course a lot of the names were changed and players went in different directions. But it's still a day to remember because it has to do with hockey.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay. Mm-hmm. There we go. September the 15th was International Day of Democracy, which is a good thing. And on that date in 1904, Wilbur Wright made his first airplane flight in a state that some of us are more familiar with than others, North Carolina.
There we go.
There we go. It's an outstanding state. It's a beautiful place. If you haven't been there, go.
It's amazing to think in only 100 somewhat years of aviation history that the
right.
leap forward is incredible.
It really is. When
Must
you
have
look
come
at the
from
time.
aliens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Alien technology.
Can't explain that.
Yeah, 1928, Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin. So two good things on that
Wait
day.
a minute. Isn't he the guy that
Bread
created
hasn't-
James Bond?
Yeah,
No, that's Ian Fleming. Sorry.
that's right.
Bread hasn't been safe since.
September 17th was National Apple Dumpling Day in the U.S. That's today, the 17th. Today's National
okay.
Apple Dumpling Day. It's nice and cozy.
Hurrah.
There we go. September 17th, in 1964. This is a good atheist story. We haven't had a good atheist story for a while.
All right. Let me get comfortable with this.
Okay, on September 17th, Canadian Justice Minister Guy Favreau said that being an atheist should not in any way be a barrier to becoming a Canadian citizen. Now, here's the background on that.
Prerequisite.
Yeah. That's right. Here's the background to that. After the Second World War, there were a lot of people who immigrated into Canada. Some went to the United States, some went to Canada. And there were a lot that came from the Netherlands. Well, one of the couples that came from the Netherlands was a couple named Ernest and Cornelia Bergsma. And they ended up at the Haldimand County Court in Cayuga for their April 3rd, 1963 citizenship hearing. They anticipated no problems with the application for citizenship. They'd been there for a while. They were settled. He was employed. Everything. He was employed at Stelco in Hamilton. And they had settled in Caledonia with 3 children. They had a 4th that was born in Canada, so they thought when they filled everything out, it was a slam dunk. They were really nice people. They weren't activists. They were just nice, good people who were going to become good Canadians. So they filled out the paperwork, and a judge whose name was Wilfred Leach presided over the hearing. So according to Ernest Bergsma, the judge asked where they came from and how long they'd been in the country and all that kind of stuff. And then he asked why they came to Canada and what kind of newspaper they read and who was the Premier of Ontario, regular stuff. And then Leach said, "What church do you attend?" And Ernest said, "None." And the judge said, "You don't believe in God?" And he was dumbfounded. And he paused for a minute and he said, "No, I don't." So the judge then said, "Do you know that this is a Christian company, a Christian country?" No. And Leach then went on, according to court transcript, saying, "You must believe in something. The oath of allegiance doesn't mean anything if you don't believe in God. The things we believe in this country stand for Christian values and the teachings of Jesus Christ."
Oh, God.
And then he added, "Not everybody follows this, but that's what we try to attain in this country, the Christian way of life. I feel you must have some kind of faith, but you don't seem to believe in anything from what I can gather. As I understand from your evidence, you have no religion at all." And then he denied their application because in the judge's opinion, under Section 10 of the Canadian Citizenship Act, the Bergmas were not of good character, a judgment he based on their professed atheism. So
the irony of that is when you're Christian, you're not supposed to judge.
Yeah, but he was the judge. He did. Here come the judge, and he judged. And they tried twice to be able to do this, and in both cases, they were denied. So they finally got people who are on their side, and then they informed the newspaper. And then finally it went to the Justice Minister, Farreau. So when he looked at it, he decided that in a unanimous decision, he brought it to committee, he brought it to a unanimous decision by Chief Justice Dana Porter and Justices Colin Gibson and F.G. McKay, the Ontario. When it went finally to the Court of Appeal, the committee sent it to the Court of Appeal. And the Court of Appeal ruled that lack of religious belief alone is not a ground on which citizenship court should decide against an application for citizenship. And they further said that while the Bergsmas entertained certain honest convictions and intellectual doubts which persuaded them to reject the idea of the existence of a supreme being, they could replace the oath with an affirmation of allegiance in terms determined by the Minister of Citizenship and Immigration. That was in 1964, and then there was a white paper that was issued that totally overhauled the immigration policy in 1966. So they can swear and affirm there is no longer in the oath now an allegiance to God.
In their way, they changed the laws of this country.
In the way they did. But can you imagine a judge sitting there and saying this is a Christian country? I
cringe whenever I hear that.
And that was in 1964.
The Native Americans might disagree with that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, unbelievable.
If you don't believe in the great raven, you're not welcome.
Anyway, that's a really good atheist story that turned out well. And that, dear listeners, brings to a close another passing parade of interesting, mundane, unusual, and occasionally bizarre. No, nothing bizarre this time.
I don't know. There's always a little bizarre.
I know. I've got to make 2 bizarre events next time.
If not, it's the host of the show.
That's right. And people that make up this day in history.
Thank you, Nancy. And we'll be right back right after this.
Hi, I'm the Supreme Irreverend Dr. Randy Tyson from the Legion of Reason Diversion. Join me and my co-hosts, Christine Shelska, Twyla, and Nate Phelps, as we explore issues at the intersection of atheism, humanism, and skepticism. Topics range from alternative medicine to the interference of religion in public policy. We often have special guests to help us understand the topic du jour. Previous guests include biologist Jerry Coyne, ex-Muslim author Ali Rizvi, philosopher Peter Boghossian, and the late physicist Victor Stanger. You can watch us on the Legion of Reason YouTube channel or subscribe to the audio version through your favorite podcatcher such as iTunes or Stitcher. And don't forget to like the Legion of Reason Facebook page.
Now it's time for an atheistaudiobooks.com sneak preview. The happy atheist disproving Christianity after faith, our Constitution, baptized atheist, the God virus.
Here is an excerpt from The Good News Club, The Christian Rights Stealth Assault on America's Children by Catherine Stewart.
This book had its beginnings in one of those events that at first seems too small to matter, until suddenly it becomes too big to ignore. When a program called The Good News Club showed up on a roster of after-school activities at my daughter's public elementary school in Santa Barbara, California, I didn't give it much thought. The club advertised itself as a non-denominational Bible study program for children of kindergarten age and older, and it required parental consent for children to participate. I soon found out, however, that the Good News Club is very different from what it appears to be. More importantly, I discovered that the club is really just one small part of a much larger story that should be of concern to anyone who cares about the future of public education, or indeed the future of secular democracy in the United States.
The Good News Club, The Christian Rights Stealth Assault on America's Children, is now available on atheistaudiobooks.com.
A Canadian, a New Yorker, and a Southern belle walked into a podcast, and all hell broke loose. Seriously, though, what happens when we three ladies get together? Well, definitely a lot of talking. And accents. Funny accents. Well, I don't have an accent, but my co-hosts sure do. We mix North, South, and the Great White North together for 2 hours of pure secular discussion. Nothing is off limits. From goofy religions like Scientology, woo like ghost hunting and alternative medicine, to hardcore history, hermeneutics, sex, and science. We cover it all. What the heck is a hermeneutic? Well, it's not a guy named Herman who sings falsetto, that's for sure. Join Beth, Ashley, and myself, Deborah, every Monday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, and we take you beyond the trailer park and bring the conversation to life. Join us live on YouTube and participate in the conversation via the Q&A system, or catch us later on Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, and Nobex. Visit www.beyondthetrailerpark.com for links to the show and our upcoming schedule. Bring your wine and sweet tea and settle in for fun facts and free thinking. We happily wear the explicit tag, though, so make sure to wash out your mouth with something tasty before listening. That's live at 9:30 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. Come give us a like and a share, no matter what type of accent you have.
And we're back. Our next guest is an engineer right out of Florida. Please, ladies and gentlemen, would you be so kind to welcome John Herrick to the show? Hi, John.
Hello, this is John Herrick.
That's our live audience.
That's our live audience. They just love you up here.
Yeah, welcome, John. We wish we were down in sunny Florida today. It's a little hazy, rainy up here in British Columbia today.
It's absolutely gorgeous here.
John, for our audience that obviously does not know you, would you be so kind to give us a Reader's Digest introduction as to who you are?
Born in Maine.
That's not your fault.
Florida.
That's not your fault, man.
I studied civil engineering and worked in the construction industry, everything from nuclear facilities to what have you. I was city engineer for 2 different cities, and now I'm retired.
Well, that sounds fun. And now you're retired, just riding your bike and having fun down in Florida.
That's for sure. Bicycle, motorcycle, kayak, and powerboat.
Well, thank you for joining us on the show. And today we'll be discussing about the conspiracy theories behind 9/11. But first, before we do that, we do our fun segment that we always love called Another Brilliant Moment, brought to you by religion. Oh, yes. The fancy world of religion. Now, I've got a great story here, and I want your opinion. Hopefully you guys can tell me, since I've got two ladies in the room, I really want to talk about that one, too. Now,
That's the first time for you, huh, Evan?
Hey, don't make me mute you. According to a bizarre sermon by Pastor Chris, Oyakhilome? Oh, I don't care what his name is.
Yeah, that sounds
Pastor Chris, the senior pastor at Christ Embassy Ministries, an online church. Women need to do a better job of listening to their husbands.
I agree.
Because the only successful marriage is one where women obey their masters. Oh boy, I can see some steam rising from my two ladies here. Husband does not mean that the male partner in a marriage. Husband means master, he says. The reason for most problems in Christian marriages is the fact that women refuses God's definition of marriage and form theirs. They believe they're equal partners. If most women had their fathers bold enough to talk to them, they would be very successful in marriage and they will be very happy people. I'm not even going to keep on going with this. I'm just going to release this.
So we know he's single, but how many times has he been divorced?
I'm just wondering if the man feels comfortable eating meals at home, because I know what I would be doing.
He's got a lot of Swanson meals.
Didn't Kurt Cameron say the exact same thing?
Yes, and actually his sister, incredibly enough, agreed with him.
That's the one from Full House, I think.
Oh, I don't know.
Well, you see.
One of those horrible 80s sitcoms.
Her father was obviously bold enough to talk to her.
Yeah. John, any thoughts on that story?
I've seen that story on the internet. I also have read the Bible 4 times, and I know that that's exactly what Paul says in the Bible, that he wants everything to be the man's world.
Hold on a second, John. Something could just call me here. You read the Bible 4 times?
Uh-huh.
What the hell is wrong with you?
I was young, living on a farm up in Maine with nothing else. We had no TV, nothing else, so there was nothing else to do.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Fair enough.
Both Testaments?
Oh, yeah, the whole book.
All right.
He's better than I read it twice, but...
Yeah, I think it says man is head of the woman the way Jesus is head of the church.
But we all know that even if the man is the head of the household, when the neck decides to turn, the head always follows. Otherwise, we have death.
Yeah, that pretty much sums up my relationship.
No, I'm very, very tolerant. I think the man should not be the dictator in the home.
Somebody's got to be the dick and somebody's got to be the tater, right?
That's not good.
The comments of Deborah, not necessarily those of Left of the Valley subsidiaries.
I like her already.
You know, as much as we can mock and make fun of this poor soul, you have to. It's sad to think how many people are still in that frame of mind that need to be liberated.
Yeah.
Well, the worst part of it is that they raise their little girls to believe that kind of thing.
Oh, but they
That's
raise their sons to believe the same thing.
Yeah.
There's 2 parts to that story,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's a chance their sons are going to get their ass kicked by their future girlfriends anyway.
Yeah.
The girls have less of a chance. But my philosophy when I was dating or attached with somebody was always, I make the big decisions, she makes the small decisions, but she gets to decide what's a big and a small decision. That saves everybody. I've got another story for you guys. Speaking of male and women relationship, after a youth pastor in Ohio raped a teen girl, church officials asked the young victim to apologize to her rapist's wife.
Yep.
Incredibly enough, this is Brian Mitchell, a North Olmsted youth pastor, will spend a decade in prison for raping a 16-year-old girl who was also a member of his church. He's 31. He pleaded guilty to 4 counts of sexual battery. Mitchell has sexually abused a teen at least 2 separate occasions. On a letter to the court recounting her horrific experience at the hands of the demented youth pastor, the unnamed girl wrote that, I give him no permission. I clearly said no, I didn't want to. After the youth pastor was arrested, repeatedly raping the unnamed teen girl, officials at the Columbia Road Baptist Church, it's always the Baptist, blamed and shamed the young victim and forbade the family of the unnamed teenager from attending services until she apologized to the wife of the pastor.
Some stories like that are so bad that trying to get your head around it, to say something meaningful is just impossible. It's awful. It's horrid. It shouldn't be happening. Unbelievable.
Unfortunately, it happened to my parents.
Oh,
my parents went to a Baptist church. They found out from some of the young girls that the assistant pastor was messing with them. So they took it to the deacons, and the deacons kicked them out of the church.
He was doing them a favor. They didn't belong there.
Well, I thought they were doing them a favor because, like the article says that they forbade them from coming back to the church. That's not really a punishment in my eyes. That's actually, salvation. They don't
I
have to
wasn't
go
coming
back
anyways.
No, I mean, I guess it's just another way that shows how many different ways people's minds can get distorted, so far beyond reality that it's difficult to have a conversation with them because their worldview is just nuts.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no other way of putting it. It is crazy, and that's what religion does to your brain.
Well, it's the infallibility thing, Whatever happens, it's not the church's fault. It had to be the girl's fault. It had to be the little boy's fault. Whatever it is. That's why the Catholic Church was just shipping them around, right? They would molest kids, and then they just ship them to a different country.
Yeah. It's bad enough. Well, anyway, let's move on to something interesting. So, today we are talking, since we just had 9/11 go by, 16 years now. Is it 15? 15 years? 15 year anniversary? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're still talking about that horrible event. I think every generation has one event that people talk about, and where were you when JFK was killed? And for my generation is, where were you on 9/11? And we have the pleasure of having John with us as a structural engineer that can help us debunk some of the myth. John, you good with doing that?
I'm here.
Perfect. So, who wants to go first, John? Tyler, you want to go?
Yeah, the reason I invited John on the show is because he's been a long-time member of some of the Facebook groups that I'm a part of and run, and him and I have kind of debated side by side on this subject with other people, and he destroyed them worse than I did, so figured I'd bring him on and talk about it. And part of the new stuff that has come out is there was this article this guy posted, and it said 15 years after 9/11, Science Journal is what it said. A physics science journal has declared that there definitely was controlled demolition. It's from a Free Thought Project. Yeah, I know that sounds really reliable, doesn't it? And then you click on it, Physics Science Journal turns into a magazine where 4 physicists who watched some video footage decided. I'm like, get out of here. Really? People don't open links. They're just like, wow, Physics Science Journal.
It's interesting you say that, because a lot of time when we debate philosophy and things like that, you'll have engineers interjecting their opinion, and you say, you're not a physicist. You really shouldn't be talking about this. Now we have the other way around. Now we have an engineer that has the expertise to debunk this, but now we have physicists coming in and say, oh, of course. Right? So, John, give us your thoughts on the whole collapse of the Twin Towers.
Okay. I was working in an engineering company at the time they came down, and the engineering company that I worked for was hired to analyze Building 7 and determine how long it would take to rebuild it. So for the next 6 months, I pored over those plans, worked on them, worked through all the videos, everything relative to Building 7, as well as I got an interest in Building 1 and 2 and talked to some engineers and worked with other people that were involved in it. And I spent the last 15 years debating, working, analyzing it, and that's where I come from.
Okay, so the question is, what question do we ask about this? Were these buildings brought down by dynamite stored on the columns? Was this a controlled demolition? Was this an inside job?
I spent all day yesterday working with one of those. I think there are 1,000 or 16,000. Different websites that try to debunk that the failure for the Twin Towers was the fasteners at the end of the floors, where the floors connect to the columns, and they tried to find anything and everything they could possibly think of to work against all the Twin Towers, the Building 7, the Pentagon, and if let's see, can you see this guy?
No, camera's not turned on.
This is a little cartoon character. He's the one that took them all down. I mean, that's as bad as what all these conspiracy theorists come up with. You know, it's whatever they can possibly think of, and yet it was very simple.
Come on, John, you're lying to us. Come on, we've been lied to. We know that the load of fuel from the aircraft was the cause of structural failure. No kerosene can burn hot enough to melt steel. Stop lying to us, John.
The kerosene blew out. 2/3 of it stayed in the building, started fires. When the explosion happened, the material that was the mineral material that was the fireproofing, it crystallized that. It just turned it into crystal, which was no longer a factor in trying to keep the steel cold, or at least protect it from the 2,000-degree heat that the fires contributed.
So you're saying that at 2,000 degrees normally it doesn't burn hot enough, but are you saying essentially that the steel didn't necessarily have to melt for it to collapse?
The videos of the piles and piles and piles of all that steel out on Staten Island don't show a single piece of melted steel. There's no. You don't have to melt the steel to do the damage that was done. All that had to be done was heat up the connections and the trusses holding up the concrete floors enough so they sagged and ripped the brackets that were holding them off the wall. And what I do is I teach my kids when I teach that I take a yardstick and I have the kids hold it every inch up and down, and then you can push on the top, and you can push with all your might, and nothing happens. So then I tell the kids, okay, take a few off. They take some off, take more off, and then all of a sudden the pressure will bend it, and then it'll break. So that's what happened to the World Trade Center. When you take the floors off, then instead of having a yardstick that's attached all the way, it will flex, and then the building will come down.
Yeah, see, that molten steel argument is one of the most common things that I've seen, and the sources that I'm using here is things like PBS, Popular Mechanics. And me being blind, obviously, I can't see it. But the explanation is exactly what you said, is that there was fires in the building that caught on to, office supplies and drywall and stuff like that. And these conspiracy theorists are pointing to that, saying, look, that's liquid steel. And we're saying, no, that's a whole bunch of shit burning altogether. But if there was molten steel, you would find a bunch of pools of it in the basement, and none was found.
What they're looking at is apparently there was a lot of aluminum in one spot, and hot aluminum that's mixed with trash. When it burns, it is yellow, and it poured out of the side of the building. That was some aluminum that was burning.
Okay, but let's go back to the steel and the heat there for a sec. Senior engineer Fareed Oh, God, I'm masking his name. Let's just call him Fareed. Of the American Institute of Steel Construction says that steel lose about 50% of its strength at 1100 degrees. Is that true?
Right. That's correct.
So by the time it reaches 1800 degrees, then the structure of the integrity of the steel is probably like down to the 20 or 10%.
So it's more like a spaghetti, and instead of the where it's dry, when it's wet,
So it doesn't have to melt. It just has to bend.
No,
Right,
no.
it's going to warp.
Yeah, it warps. Yeah.
Well,
And then you've got all this pressure, the weight of everything else pulling on it.
correct me if I'm wrong here, John, but I'm not sure if you guys have seen Why the Towers Fell. It's a PBS Nova documentary, and it basically said that these buildings were built to withstand being hit by a plane. They were built to withstand extreme fires, but they weren't built for both combined together.
But when you say plane, are you talking about,
Cessna?
the Cessna
No,
or
the
a jet?
Yeah, the jet as well.
But
they
were designed for 707 to hit it, but that wasn't the strongest. It had to be even designed for 120 mile per hour winds. That was much more of a strain on the buildings than a plane hitting it.
John, when we saw the footage of the buildings collapse, as each tower was collapsing, you could see, if you focus your lens there, you could actually see puffs of dust and smoke that are ejected from each sides of the building as it collapsed. What are those? I mean,
there was one just before it started collapsing, that there was a puff of smoke that came out one of the vents. When you've got all the gypsum board and everything else being crushed, you get a lot of dust, and that's what you were seeing is dust being pushed out the vents.
Okay, so I guess this is where we can understand why it looked like for the untrained eye. It looks like a charge was set and exploded, and then collapsed the window or broke the window, and then it fell on top. That's what the average layman thinks.
Okay, let's go back to the idea of explosives in the buildings. So somebody had to come up with the idea. Okay, we're going to take some planes, and we're going to hit those two towers, and the debris is going to hit Building 7. So now we're going to go over and surreptitiously put tons of thermite, is what they're super thermite, since thermite didn't pass muster. So they went to super thermite in these buildings at the levels that they pre-selected as to where the planes were going to hit, and that they were going to put it in Building 7, knowing that a third of the building, the face of the building, was going to be ripped out by those huge steel beams and columns. So we've got this scenario. Why bother? Why not? One idea was, why not just go over to Iraq and do a scenario that, they do have nuclear material here, instead of doing all this elaborate, getting the airplanes, getting the dynamite or thermite or whatever. It is just absolutely an insane way to think about it.
Yeah, see, I used to believe in this conspiracy until I really thought about it. And anybody who thinks that they're going to do what you said, fly planes into the buildings and absolutely have to count on parts of the buildings hitting Tower 7, and then having to be able to actually sneak into the building and plant these explosives, which would leave physical evidence behind, anybody who believes that is not CIA material. I mean, if you're going to try to pull something off like that, you're going to want to leave the least amount of physical evidence behind possible. So the logical thing to do would have been just to pay off some radical Islamic group to fly planes into the building and then be done with it.
Right.
Why would you leave physical evidence like that? It's just completely unnecessary.
That's part of the plan of the Illuminati, don't you know?
So the other damning thing, which was one of the things that I had believed, was that what's the guy's name? Larry Silverstein or something? The guy that owned the buildings?
The guy who just bought it. What was it? 6 or 8 weeks before?
Well,
One
no,
of
what I was
the
gonna,
things-
no, what I was going to say is that there's that
Yeah.
clip of him saying we should just pull the building, like Tower 7.
No, he didn't say pull the building.
Well, what he meant was pull the firefighters out so they don't
Right.
die. But then
Right.
they quote mined it to make it sound like pull the building, as in blow it up and take it down.
Yeah, that's insane.
So I'm just trying to cover as many myths as possibly. So go on with what you're saying about 6 weeks prior.
He bought the building, and the myth that he was going to get a lot of money out of the insurance company. I was working with the insurance companies. The first thing that they did was they said, number one, we've never even signed the insurance policy. They had not put together the policy yet. He owned the building, but the insurance policy, they were still negotiating as to what the insurance policy was going to say. And number two, in the policy, it had a phrase that said that if it was a terrorist act, that this policy is null and void.
Well, there goes the financial incentive.
So his financial incentive was gone right there.
So right there, it just proves my theory. Insurance companies are in on it. They're the ones doing all this. You cannot trust insurance companies.
No, the insurance company, at their first meeting, one guy stood up and said, since this was a terrorist act, we're not giving them a penny.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over. What the fuck are we going to do now?
So the rest of the guys kind of looked at him and askance, and I think they decided that they would never do any business in New York if they came up with that and never paid him anything. But it's still, I think it's still in court as to what they are going to pay him, or if anything.
Well, and my official position here is I don't think it's even falsifiable whether there was a conspiracy in general or not. But the whole controlled demolition thing has absolutely been completely debunked in my mind. I'm not saying there was definitely not any conspiracy whatsoever, but this part of it, and as well as the, what was that, Flight 193, and then the whole Pentagon missile thing, in my mind, those have all been completely debunked, but that doesn't mean there wasn't some type of conspiracy.
Inconceivable!
I don't know who you'd say that was a conspirator.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they say that, the Bush administration, so they could go over in as an excuse.
The insurance companies are the conspirator.
To go into Afghanistan and Iraq, which I don't care about anyways, because there's no evidence for or against it, and it makes no difference to me. I'm trying to deal with the stuff where there's actual demonstrable scientific evidence, one way or another.
People who have conspiracy theories have them for their own reason. I was going to say their own pleasure.
No, but
that's absolutely right.
Yeah,
that's more accurate, actually.
And regardless of the facts, ma'am, they're going to find something to cling to that theory and to be able to write the books and get online and have meetings and wear funny hats and do the whole thing. So the fact that all these theories and myths come up, I think, are interesting, but they have absolutely no validity, and it must drive people. Did they drive you nuts, John, or do you just kind of take them, like flies to be swatted?
No, he loses his shit.
Yesterday, I spent the entire day going through one of their videos, one point after another. At 13 minutes and 20 seconds, they say thus and so. So I just say, no, that can't have happened. You don't have any evidence for that. I'm an engineer. I just pick them apart.
Well, my theory is I think ICBC killed JFK, and I'm going to stick to that. And I don't care if you don't have any evidence.
Well, and I did believe this conspiracy, so maybe it's just the way that my brain is wired that I care about what is true, and I didn't want to just dismiss everything. Because that's what they do. John and I were debating this guy the other day, and it doesn't matter who you cite. Oh, they were paid off. That's the excuse. No matter what it is, they were disappeared or they were paid off or whatever it is.
It's ICBC. They got plenty of money. John, how much? Speaking of Building 7, how much debris fell on that building? Do we know?
Of it.
What?
All of it. I don't know what your question is.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Oh, it's just that the claim is that nothing hit Building 7, and then it collapsed.
Oh, a third of the south face of the building was just carved out by those huge exterior steel members of the tower. I mean, it was, and nobody can see it through the smoke, so they deny it. That's kind of where they're coming from as well. You look at the video of the north side of the building, and you see there's nothing wrong with that building, and then you look at the column of smoke that's coming off the south side of the building. I mean, it was incredibly involved. The other thing that most people don't know is that underneath Building 7 there was a subway and Con Ed. Half of the site was covered with Con Ed and their generators and 109,000 gallons of fuel in the north side of the site. So when they built Building 7, they had to sidestep all the different generators down below, so it wasn't a uniform foundation underneath that at all. So, and what they did over the subways, they put a great big auditorium. So you've got the 47-story building with a very flimsy foundation underneath it to begin with, and then on top of the building, there were two giant water towers, water tanks. So they had a dead weight up there on the top of the building that was immense. Once the face of the building was ripped out, the water lines that went from that top of the building were severed, and the water tanks were of no value. You couldn't get water out of them, so it was sitting there full of water. Two huge tanks that took up the entire top of that building. A huge dead load right there that nobody takes into account when that thing came down.
So basically added weight, a damaged sprinkler system so they couldn't really put out the fires very easily, and then extra fuel to the fire.
They didn't have firemen. All the firemen were working on buildings 1 and 2. They didn't have enough firemen then to go in Building 7, and then as it was burning pretty heavily, they said, this thing's going to go anyway, so get all the people out and go with it. That building was ready to go from the get-go.
So you essentially had flimsy construction.
No,
not flimsy construction.
Just like a spider.
Flimsy foundation for a reason.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
It's not flimsy, but it's not standard.
Not as strong as the other ones.
Was Building 7 a very old building?
No.
Do we know? No.
No, that was they were all built together in the 70s.
Oh, it was just made on a Friday. Okay. Do we want to get into the whole Pentagon thing?
I do.
Okay, let's
go. And flight, was it 193? Did I get that right?
Flight 77.
No, the one that they claim never actually...
I think it's just Flight 93.
Went down in
the field. I think it's just Flight 93.
Okay, 93. I don't know if I'm 193, but... Okay, yeah, you wanted to start with the Pentagon?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, the Pentagon... you asked me to go for it?
Yeah,
sure.
Okay. The Pentagon, one pilot says, oh, no, it could never have happened. The plane at that level, going that fast, the ground effect would never let the plane go down that low. And I just sat there and shook my head thinking, okay, a plane going 500 miles an hour near the ground can't stay in the air. So any plane that's about ready to crash, you just get it going nice and fast near the ground, and then it can't fall. The whole scenario in his head doesn't make any sense. Secondly, he said, well, all the light poles had just fallen over. Well, that's not what the photographs show. They clipped them, cut them right in half with the wings of the airplane. And then he said, well, the adjustment for the elevation would have taken the plane 300 feet above the Pentagon, and no. And then he said that there should have been 3 holes, one for the fuselage, one for each engine, but there's only one hole that was 16 feet diameter. Well, that's not true. The photographs show almost 200 feet wide that it was destruction. And then he said that after the plane went 300 feet over, then a missile came and hit it. And I'm looking at him saying, okay, how come we have some conspiracy theorists that say no plane hit it, and then other conspiracy theorist says, well, there was no evidence from an airplane. And then you have another person that says, well, the engines that were found had serial numbers that shouldn't have been on that airplane. So, okay, we've got engines in place, I mean, in the debris, and we have no engines in place. I mean, these guys are just all over the map. And then you have bodies that they found. They found the black boxes. They found the engines, like I said. They found the landing gear. And people were picking up, I have seen videos of people picking up pieces of the airplane all over the lawn. So
yeah, but those people were paid to say that. So
okay, yes, and all the people that were sitting on the highway that the plane went over their head were all paid to say, no, we didn't see that airplane coming over our heads.
Wait a minute. You're saying here that when that plane hit, we should not have seen or expected a cartoon-like hole in the wall, the exact shape of the plane with the wings and everything? That's not what we should expect?
This is a concrete, reinforced with blast-proof windows. I mean, this wasn't like the World Trade Center. World Trade Center, you saw the image of the whole plane cutting in. Well, this concrete building was a lot stronger than that.
So all my structural learning that I've learned from Bugs Bunny cartoons of, the exact shape of the Bugs Bunny going through a wall, all that is wrong. That's completely wrong.
It is true in the World Trade Center, but not in the Pentagon.
Oh, Kevin, does that mean we've got to take that BBU diploma in engineering off the wall?
Yeah, I take down my diploma.
Oh.
Thanks a lot, John.
Oh,
my whole world's been shattered now.
Yeah.
What about the supposed surveillance tapes from, I think it was a corner store or something? You know what I'm talking about, John?
Yep.
What about that?
That plane's flying, 500, 600 miles an hour or something, or knots, or I'm not sure which that was. But when you have a very limited sight view, let's say your camera's looking at 200, 300 feet wide, you're only gonna get 1 or 2 frames of something that's blurred.
I think the claim was that this camera would have caught it, but the FBI or whoever took it and won't release it to the public. So I haven't heard anything about it since.
Either it was just a blur, with a couple of frames of something blurred going by. It's probably nothing worth anything.
Well, that or you don't want to release video footage of people's loved ones smashing into a building and dying.
That's true, too.
I probably wouldn't want to release that if I were them either.
Well, there was live TV on World Trade Center.
Hold on there. No, if we talk about the Pentagon, there was a claim, and I'm going to put my conspiracy hat on. Many Pentagon windows remained in one piece, even the ones just above the point of impact from the 757. So, obviously, it shows that it was a missile that hit the thing and not an airplane, right?
Again, reinforced.
Blast-proof building.
Yeah.
Hey, John was supposed to debunk me, not you guys.
The other thing, I have a good friend that I've been sailing with for 40 years. I went sailing with him the other day, and he was saying, no planes hit anything. They were all missiles. That I said, well, where are the planes? And he said, oh, they took them to an island down in the Bahamas. And I said, so we've got hundreds of people down there in the islands on those airplanes? And he said, yeah, they're just keeping them there to keep them quiet.
Yes, the island of Dr. Moreau, I believe.
If
I
we build
think
a
Elvis
wall,
is also there.
we can keep all of them from coming back to America.
all the phone calls, people say, well, you can't make a phone call from an airplane. And I said, well, on my job in 5 years, I flew 1,015 times. And every once in a while, I'd pull out my phone. It's not right, but and see if I could call somebody as we were landing. And absolutely, you can make a phone call. It's not always the best connection to, but you definitely can make phone calls. And some of the phone calls were made from the plane's internal phone that is used by the flight attendants. So that was those phones were made for airplane to ground phone calls. So their contention that the phone calls were fake is not very believable.
Did you see the documentary Loose Change, John?
I've seen so many.
Okay, well, you probably have seen it, and that's just kind of how people are. This must be true. They made a documentary about it. Yeah, well, I'd say most documentaries I've seen are crap. But that's one of the points that they make in the documentary is at this certain amount of, thousands of feet, you can't make a phone call. Well, you can. It works. It just doesn't work very well. And there was apparently a lot of calls that were reported from the plane that ended up getting dropped simply because they were too high up.
Yep.
So they went from it doesn't work well to it doesn't work at all. Therefore, if you watch Jesse Ventura, they've got this computer program that can simulate your voice and just all this crazy stuff that they just runaway conspiracy.
Jesse Ventura is going to come here and put you in a chokehold. He's a big guy.
Well, my sailing buddy, I did call him from the air when I was still in the air, and I left a message on his phone saying, we're still 1,000 feet in the air, and I'm talking to you on my phone. Didn't matter. He wasn't there. Had to leave a message, but he didn't believe me anyway.
All right. So I guess in conclusion, John, if you were to recommend some reading material for people that are not persuaded about the truth of what happened on 9/11, what would you recommend?
The first one is on YouTube. V equals 3550HCX9118. It's a Discovery Channel from the UK, and it's entitled "How the Twin Towers Collapsed." The conspiracy people say there was no steel. It was all immediately shipped off. Well, they have videos of these guys analyzing all these inspectors inspecting all the steel. They had put numbers on each one of the members as to where in the buildings they came from. They were analyzing all the steel right there, and they're saying, oh, there's no evidence. It was all taken away.
Yeah, that's the exact same program that I was referencing from Nova PBS.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, John, for being with us today. We certainly appreciate your insight into this whole conspiracy of 9/11. But before I let you go, I got a small favor to ask you. Can I get you to say, "Hi, I'm John Herrick, and I took a left at the Valley"?
Hi, I'm John Herrick, and I took a left somewhere.
And that was John from Florida. Great conversation, great guy. He's very knowledgeable.
Yeah, he is, and he was there at the time. With not only with the engineering firm, but also with the insurance. So he gives us authentic information from all different sides.
Yeah, I couldn't stump him. I tried. Tyler, you wanted to add something that you didn't know about John?
Oh, no, just was going to recommend that if anybody is interested in learning more about this subject, they should look up the debate between Loose Change, that silly documentary, and Popular Mechanics. They cover pretty much everything. They go into a little bit more than we had time for today, like with Flight 93, et cetera, et cetera.
Et cetera, et cetera. And there's certainly more information you can find out there. Thank you so much, guys, for being on the show. Deb, thank you for being on the show. Hey, that wasn't too bad, was it?
No.
Yeah, welcome, Deb. Come back many times. Love to have you.
Coming up, we have David Silverman. That should be October 1st, and we should have a lot of fun with that. We've got a great October month. We also have the Gospel According to John. Should be fun. We should be talking about St. Paul with our friend David Fitzgerald. We also have the Satanist. I'll be appearing on our show. And, of course, our always coveted Halloween episode with our friends from the Legion of Reason. So we got a great October coming up. You can always reach us at leftatthevalley.com. You can follow us on Facebook, at Twitter. You can send me an email or a death threat at leftatthevalley@outlook.com. Guys, thank you so much. Until next time.
You just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist. It amazes me how perfectly intelligent people can reach the conclusion that all non-believers are evil. What a fucked up statement. Do you realize what you're saying? But according to your book, this is how your God made me. Skeptical of anything that contradicts history, denies evolution, hates science, promotes mystery. I'd rather see the truth than to bask in my own ignorance. Rather be alone than surrounded by damn idiots. As long as there's a breath in my body, you can bet your last dollar I'll be working hard fighting this problem. Religion is a disease, it comes from culture, only true on a regional scale. Science is universal. Are you to say that Horus isn't real, but Jesus is? Or Zeus, Thor, Mithra, Vishnu, you don't believe in them? I think the reason is apparent. You do what you're told and believe in the God assigned by your parents. I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist. Now let me take a sec. Don't mean to sound so hateful, but I swear to God, pun intended, I find it disgraceful that thousands of children are raped by priests, and since they're holy men of God, they get away scot-free. And the Pope does his very best to keep it on the hush. Don't wanna affect business, he loves money too much. We know that they love the kids, but how the fuck can we protect them while they planning to molest them? We teaching them to respect them.
Fuck that.
The system is broke down, working backwards, and the only action or tactic I plan to practice now is to attack them. The parties of God's hands are bloodstained, millions of murders by believers, and they're all in God's name. And let me take a sec, don't mean to sound so hateful, but I swear to God, pun intended, I find it disgraceful that many atheists are told to be quiet. You're not alone, speak your mind, time to let it be known. I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist.